please stand. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Mandy. Oh, I know what I was doing. Rocky, you may know, in these meetings, are we allowed proxies? Like, if Deb had asked someone to be a proxy, would that work? Or
Not really,
Okay.
no.
I told you.
I've not seen anyone else doing proxies.
I'm glad you were here to answer that question.
Okay. But we have a quorum with us
Yes.
for proxy, which is fine. Okay, so now, sorry, roll call if you wouldn't mind.
David,
Here.
Mindy, I'm here, Shelley,
Here,
Gary,
Here.
Rutland,
and
and Deb.
liaison.
Deb is not here. Oh, Jake.
No, I'm not officially, I'm a liaison, not a committee member, so.
Okay. And then Deb is in Colorado at this point in time. So we have 3 of 4 voting members in attendance, so we have a quorum and can conduct business. An agenda has been provided and was provided to the village. Are there any changes to today's agenda? There being none, then we'll approve the agenda as presented. And then we all received a copy of the minutes from our August 20th meeting for any corrections and changes. That's what I was looking for. Mindy, you didn't receive any changes or corrections from new members?
I don't think so.
Okay. Then we will, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Mindy made a motion. Second. Okay, all in favor, aye. None opposed, so the minutes are approved as presented. I did get email from Rocky, I may have forwarded to you among all the others, that now the village would like us to have the secretary's signature and the chair's signature on the minutes before they get sent to him. And then when they're sent to Rocky, you need to say as approved.
Okay.
Because he's saying other committees just keep sending their drafts, and as they have corrections, he doesn't know how to keep up.
Okay.
So let him know that this is the final, and then we'll
just sign it.
and give it to him, and he can have this copy. Perfectly fine. Okay. Old business, I have none. If I'm not overlooking anything, we'll move to new business. The Comprehensive Planning Committee for the village asked us to prepare a committee charter, and that has gone around in email. I made a couple little edits today. My copy from Jake. And so
Just one correction, the charters are not being asked for by the Comprehensive Plan Committee. This is actually at the request of Manager Weir. Your second item is at the request of the comp plan.
okay,
So it makes sense when you think about it, having the definitions for what the committee's supposed to be doing, so that as administrations change, management change, committee members change. So yeah, this is perfectly acceptable, but I just want to make sure to document where the requests were coming from.
okay, then the corrected, we prepared a committee charter, which will be presented to the village manager.
Correct.
Mr. Weir, like I said, the majority of this, it was sent out to the committee for previous review in a different format, the grid format. So a few minutes ago, you can tell it's still above ambient temperature. I just put it in paragraph form and added, part of our supporting resources was comparable ordinances from 8 other like-sized communities, which I don't think was in the draft that I sent around earlier. So if you have taken a second to scan this, recall what we had. reviewed previously. Are there any discussion points at this time?
Well, you corrected, or you told me when I commented on one of the ordinances that, or the sample ordinances about the time factor.
Right.
And you said, well, that's not in ours, but I just wanted to make sure that that's something we wouldn't agree to.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah. But this describes our committee
okay,
for the village.
all right, let's see.
So, if there's no other further changes or discussions, I'd like to hear a motion that this be our charter and we could present this to the village manager.
I'll move that, we accept the charter as, presented.
Second.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? Okay, so this will be our charter. And Mindy, do you want to send that to Mr. Weir and then probably copy Rocky Lyra?
So I would, because if you're gonna be sending anything to council, there's the form now that we fill out. So anything that's going to council, there is a form that will go to Rocky to make sure, okay, was this approved by committee, and making sure all the documents are attached. It's just a way for him to organize everything as agenda items moving up to council. You don't have to do a form per item, so if you end up sending 3 things up, you can just put all of them on the form, and if Minnie doesn't have it, we'll get a copy of it over to you.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a form for
Okay.
submitting stuff to council, but you said this went to the managers. Is that in essence say it goes to the
Correct, so
council?
basically, the form for everything goes to the manager and Rocky, and then they figure out, okay, oh, we're missing this piece, or oh, we need this document over here, and decides, is it ready to go to council now? Does it need to go to legal? Where does this work product need to go to? But it's kind of creating a packet of information to give to Rocky or to Manager Weir to then figure out where the next step in the process is.
So find out from Rocky what form we need.
Yep,
And send us
it's a
something.
very easy form. It's just making sure that we have all of the ducks in a row, because everything
Like
goes through a lot of
transmittal,
hands to get,
basically.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, new item B is, this then was a request by the, Comprehensive Planning Committee that we develop, they had a whole series of tasks. Task 1 was to, under issues and goals, task 1 was to, describe current conditions. And so this, went to the committee previously as well. Yeah, I think this is in the form that, that we last left off after editing. I don't think I made any changes. I don't think I made any changes in the last, since then to this one. And so this is, how we're trying to describe, after the charter describes why we were formed, this is saying what exists currently that we're addressing. So if you want to take a second and scan this and try to remember if you had any questions from when it was distributed previously.
And then the reasoning behind this, the Comprehensive Plan Committee is just trying to figure out if there's any common work that's happening between the various committees, just to have an idea of what you all or workforce housing or ideas are doing. So that if there are some commonalities, if 2 committees are kind of adjacently coming at the same thing, let's loop everyone into
Yeah,
that conversation.
But we don't want to be coming at something 2 different directions and go 2 different
Correct,
directions.
exactly.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and they are working on, the village has not updated its comprehensive plan since 2008. So it's a fairly large undertaking to redo that document and incorporate all of the needs and wants from
And
today.
I think at the last couple of comprehensive planning committee meetings, we've had a representative there. And so we're trying to stay in step with whatever they're needing. So this fulfills
Yep.
that one task. Any discussion or questions on our existing conditions?
Well done.
Is there a motion then that this be presented to the comprehensive committee?
Move to do that.
Second.
We have a motion and second that this be our product or our for the comprehensive planning committee in fulfillment of their request for task 1. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Then C is discuss and approve a final version of our proposed ordinance. After our last meeting, we had representatives, I think all of us were there at least one, I can't remember if it was the next following, council meeting, and some of the council members had questions, we discussed, and then as a result, from that version to now, we did make some modifications. In particular, we added a paragraph to discuss pathway lighting, sidewalks, and stairs, because they weren't specifically addressed before. We have a lot of sidewalks, especially in the overlay area. Some homes have pathways, and apartments, condos, stuff also have lighted stairways. So that, it was kind of implied in there, but this pulls it out separately, so it's very succinct. The other question was involving the holiday lights. And we tried, so the question was, okay, we have all these numbers and lumens and stuff like that, but what does that mean? So we did try to develop a formula according to the lumens and lights of how many trees you could wrap on a certain property, describe the property in acreage, and it just didn't work. But all the other provisions for lighting, holiday lighting, outdoor lighting, really cover the holiday period. So we just kind of scratched, it wasn't applicable, or trying to numerically define holiday lighting, like so many twinkly lights or so tall of a tree, because the holiday lighting is covered in other sections by being turned off for no more than X number per acre. So that would address that paragraph. The other thing that is a difference is when we were talking about having, I think 8,000 lumens per acre, but not many properties, or at least residential properties in Angel Fire, are an acre. They're a third of an acre, quarter of an acre. They could be up to 10 acres. So does that mean, could it be implied that someone with a 10-acre lot up in the Aspens can have 80,000 lumens? So we wanted to be more specific. So our paragraph BC1 does it in brackets, that if a residential lot is up to a third of an acre, is 2,500 lumens. If it's between a third of an acre and half an acre, so many lumens, 3/4 of an acre, and then an acre, and that maxes out at 8,000 lumens per residential property. And then we said, well, how can you measure acres for commercial property, especially like the sort of the strip malls where we have 2 or 3 businesses in a row? Are they only allowed so much per acre? So for a commercial area, we said 16,000 lumens maximum. Oh, sorry, 16,000 for a multifamily unit in the overlay, which would mean the condo. So that's like sticking 4 or 5 houses together, which is reasonable. And then exterior lighting for business locations would be 8,000 lumens per contiguous commercial site. So if you have these 3 or 4 businesses in one strip and 3 or 4 businesses in another, then they would share the total lumens. So those are the major changes since we last presented it. I did come up with a question since then. Oh,
Yeah, I have a question. Backing up to the holiday lights, the only thing I think that wasn't said, and I just want to make sure it's in the ordinance as we've written it. Is there a time factor between like November and January? What is that again?
So instead of putting a time factor on it where it's like, you know, Christmas is the specific holiday, we just looked at the National Electric Code, which already has, you can't have them up for more than 90 days.
Oh,
So that's,
so what is it? Where's the start and finish then?
I think that is something that would have to be defined probably by the village, like if we're gonna.
Do you mind if do you have a copy of it, or do you only have the one?
This is mine. No, I don't
Okay.
have several, but here, if you want to see this is what Mindy's referring to.
My concern with putting, you know, like November through January or whatever is confining it to one Christian holiday and not letting anybody else have lights up for other holidays that they may celebrate.
So you're
Or
saying,
4th of July. you know.
Yeah, 4th of July.
4th of July maybe.
So are you suggesting that if someone puts holiday lighting in their yard or outside lighting of any kind is holiday lighting, then the clock starts for 90 days at that point? So it could be any time of year.
It could be any time of year, and that's the temporary lights too, like the, the ones that go on the, people wrap them around the railing of their decks. Yeah,
And then if they decide at the day 90, if they decide to take them all down and then a week later put it back up, does that start a 90-day period again?
technically, so the 90-day thing, again, comes from the National Electric Code, and that's the fire prevention, there's a lot of initials in here. Fire prevention, whatever, so if we're a fire adaptive community, they would technically have to go have them examined by an electrician to say that these lights are still safe to use again, before they put them up again, from my understanding of the electric code. What we ended up doing was just getting rid of all the language around the lumens and how much you can do, and said, go nuts, turn them off at 10. So,
Well, and again, for a 90-day period.
yeah, for
So,
90.
so I
But
mean,
they still have to go up at 10.
Mhm.
Okay.
and we're kind of being
That's a little better to.
reasonable here.
Yeah.
So reasonable for most of us is Christmas, November, December,
Sure.
January, and that covers a lot of the ski season. If someone takes their lights down and then wants 90 days for Valentine's Day,
Right.
technically that would be allowed, but that's not realistic.
Yeah, not
The
too
only
many.
other holiday we do much lighting for, I think, would be 4th of July. I don't know what's city other lighting that we would,
Yeah.
for all practical purposes, we're not trying to be so narrowly definitive that we're telling everybody what day, everything, but a general thing so that if someone is unreasonable about it, we have a fallback. And that's really all our ordinance, well, not all, but that's a large part of our wording of our ordinance is just to mitigate or eliminate the egregious offenses.
Yeah.
There may be a light here and a light there. If they're not egregious, not constant, then we're not, it's
Well, I
life.
think a good catch-all there is the 10 PM.
Right.
I like that
exactly,
provision.
Right.
Okay. All right, thanks. That's the end of my question.
So, I had reviewed the most recent one I had, and I had a few questions, just because I'm thinking back to the work session and forward towards, have we adequately addressed council's concerns from the last work session? And I think the holiday lighting, trying to put a lumen cap on that is gonna be a bit of an administrative nightmare.
Sure.
So I agree, and again, it may be that we have some feedback that maybe, because I know that the mayor is working on some specific holiday marketing, that maybe we end up with a set of dates that comp plan comes up with and said, actually, here's when we'd like to see holiday lights between here and here. So, something that could be coordinated in. As it relates to the string lights, has there been any thoughts amongst you about, lots of people use, the string style lights on their outdoor decks?
Well, that's what I was about ready to come up with that I, in my last review, is I thought in one version we had under XYZ lights are prohibited, which are their floodlights. And you have my copy there, floodlights, something.
And uplights.
Uplights are prohibited. And I thought we also had string lights prohibited.
Strobe lights too.
Yeah.
Yeah, strobe lights were, I think we ended up moving that into holiday and addressing it as
Well,
a
because
holiday.
Because, but I mean, some
Under-
people have the string lights wrapped around their desk year round.
Right, they shouldn't, because
Right,
that's the
so
fire.
I don't
that's
think
a fire
it's
thing,
clear in
not
what,
us.
in what the current wording is, it doesn't clarify that.
Now, because you do have string lights under the temporary lighting, which is holiday, string, rope, etc. So that's there. Obviously, if the lights are improperly installed, it create a fire hazard, but what about those lights are meant to be hung, right? Not wrapped around banisters is, I think, the issue. So, I'm just trying to get a feel for, because the other thing that's changed since I've seen this last is you've got, before we just had the 8,000 lumen cap. And if I remember right, 800 lumens is about a 100-watt light bulb. So for a third of an acre lots, you're talking about 3 light bulbs as the maximum. half-acre lots would get you to what? 4? It's, in other words, the count of bulbs has come down somewhat since the last council work session, so I just wanted to address that a little bit. And then the other one, you have the landscape lighting must be turned off by 10. Where's the other one? There was another one for path lighting, sidewalk lighting. Sidewalk, stair, and path lighting must be fully shielded, no more than 18 inches above the ground, and no more than 340 lumens per fixture, and fixtures no closer than 8 feet. Are those lights, because I'm not clear, are you asking for those lights to be extinguished at 10 or not?
I think so, because it's somewhere in there, we have a umbrella statement, all exterior lighting is out by 10, so that would include the pathway lighting. But we also have provision for adaptive controls, motion detector. So if your little pathway lights are motion detector,
Right.
then they would come on as someone approaches or leaves, and that's acceptable.
And
Just to leave your pathway lighting on 24/7 is not.
so the, because I think it was Councilman Humbert had the question about I've been to his house before, but it's a fairly long walk up and he's got the, solar style. Can the solar style lights come with as far as you can get a time cutoff on those?
She's got them at her house.
We have them as adaptive. They're solar
Uh-huh.
adaptive, so that as someone approaches our front porch,
They
they
turn
come
on?
on, and then 5 minutes later, or actually ours
Okay.
are shorter, but we provide 5 minutes. So they do exist, and they can't be very expensive, or we wouldn't have gotten them.
And the stairs, the condos is a bit of a concern because you have everything off at 10. I don't think they're gonna be able to turn off their stairway lights legally at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
So we have a stair section in here, but what are the thinking on, because you have this stair sidewalk path, but it doesn't specifically say those can be illuminated all the time.
Could they also have adaptive lighting for a stairway or?
I don't know. My understanding in talking to them is this is a bit of an insurance issue.
But this is input we didn't get
Yep.
until right now.
Okay, no, that's
about
fine.
what the condo associations are required to do for pedestrian safety.
And I think it's primarily because we have exterior stairs in an alpine environment that gets snow. That if you go to step on the stairs and the light is turning on as you're seeing that ice there.
Yeah.
That's a bit of the concern. So,
Then, if, our goal, I think, at this meeting is to have our ordinance in final form to be able to present at the next council meeting
yep.
Tuesday. So at this time, can we take a few minutes and modify our wording?
So I suspect what's going to happen to this first and foremost is it's not going to go to council for the vote. It's gonna get handed over to legal, is gonna be my first guess. That's where many of the first drafts go to,
Okay.
because we obviously don't wanna have to go to council and then they go back, hey, you can't do that for legalese reason X, Y, and Z. I'm not a lawyer, don't pretend to know one, but that's just been my experience. Most things that the committees have voted to approve, the first step is almost always legal.
I didn't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, because if it's totally unacceptable to council, there's no
Right.
sense time
Correct.
incurring legal costs.
100%. So the things that, I appreciate what you're doing on the holiday lights. I think that was a big concern of how are we gonna be going out and measuring lumens at, 1,200 homes in Angel Fire? Not a very practical solution. I think you're most of the way there on everything else. The biggest things, and I'm not saying they're my pushbacks, but hearing from council, I do think there is some concern, and if the solar adaptive lights are easy to come by and readily available, we'll need to make that pitch. In other words, this document's pretty dry because it's an ordinance, right? But explaining to Councilman Hubbard, hey, your concern was, how do I safely make it from my car to my front door, or my guests do that? If that's a readily available solution, great. But we're gonna have to communicate that to council, and council's gonna have to communicate it to,
Right.
all the property owners that, hey, you can have path lighting. We're not saying no path lighting, but it's just gotta be the right type. It's gotta be, the right height, the right controllable, that this is not going to create light trespass. So we're aiming at the same thing, just how we get there. There was one other thing I had. Oh, I think you saw, the manager of Alpine's comments about their security cameras and lighting out of there. There is no allowances in here for any commercial after, they have a higher lumen cap, but there is no after hours lighting in there anywhere. Now, we asked Lowe's for feedback multiple times. We've never gotten it, but if we pass this as is, we're necessarily going to be going all up and down, 434 here to those businesses saying, hey, you've got to turn your lights off now. What's the response there from for the businesses?
There is a provision in there, maybe finding it.
Yeah, we just want to.
For parking lots.
Mhm.
Service station canopies.
Not that strict. There was the 25% thing. You've already told me.
Yeah. So government agencies and businesses that operate 24 hours per day are exempt from the curfew, but must have adaptive controls that reduce lighting at 10 PM to 25% or less of the total outdoor light output allowed.
There are no businesses in town that operate 24 hours.
Okay.
None.
So I would say in that specific instance where there is a light on 24 hours, or they're talking about having a light on 24 hours a day, to me, that's not acceptable. Like, that should be something that's on a motion sensor. It doesn't need to be on unless there's activity happening in the parking lot. And honestly, people aren't gonna notice if there's activity happening in the parking lot that's weird or suspicious if that light is on 24 hours a day. If suddenly a light comes on that you're not used to seeing, then you're more likely to actually catch someone doing something.
It's fine. I'm just playing devil's advocate here for the next step, so.
And one thing I was gonna suggest on the curfew, like we'd initially said, like everything off at 10 PM, which I think in a dream world, we would have that. I'm wondering if we changed that to all non-conforming lighting off at 10 PM, if that might be an acceptable compromise.
What would conforming lighting be?
Conforming would be the low lumen, not the shielded, not the blue
Sidewalk,
lights. Yeah,
path lighting.
yeah, the path lighting that meets all of the standards here, like that can stay on if it's.
As long as it's well defined.
Mhm.
And is it already, or we can change that?
I think we've defined everything pretty well. I think the only thing is just that difference between everything off or non-conforming off.
Well, even some conforming lights can cause light trespass.
Yeah.
Particularly if the house is uphill, but then we have the light trespass clause that a conforming light that's up in the aspens that's shining down in my bedroom window, anybody's, I'm just using me as an example, would be causing light trespass or glare, and that's not permitted.
Right, so that's already covered then.
Yes,
Yeah.
so whether it's a conforming light or non-conforming light, it would, light trespass is not allowed.
Sure.
And that's the biggest thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you have your non-conforming light and it just goes in your little area.
right. That's the other thing. Like, again, the end goal in dream state is we become a dark skies community. We have all this tourism because it's so dark here, you can see as far as, yeah. But I don't know that we're gonna get there right away.
Well,
The-
so one thing, and I'm jumping around here a little bit, I did have the Public Works Director do a streetlight count for us. There's about 50 streetlights up and down 434, Bill Burgess, Vale, Aspen, kind of down here in the core area. One thing, just to make you all aware what this is gonna look like, some of those streetlights are wholly the responsibility of the Village of Angel Fire. Most of them are not. Many of them are operated, owned, and controlled by either Kit Carson or New Mexico DOT. So we can begin the process with them, but I hold no illusions that this is gonna be a quick process, particularly in MDOT, that one's gonna
Right.
take some time. So
have spoken with Kit Carson already.
Okay,
Because at the very first, yeah, what was it, the comprehensive plan meeting. There was a gentleman there from Kit Carson and he came over and spoke with us for a moment saying that they were already in the works, like talking about replacing some of the street lighting and asked if they should hold off until we had this done. And I said, yes, please. So he's already aware they have lighting that does meet dark sky standards, which is more strict than what we are.
right.
So, I think with Kit Carson, that's not gonna be a huge issue. The village, I know there are several that need
Well, and-
replacing already, so I'm sure
So,
that.
so the village problems are gonna come in two buckets. Street lights that we operate and then exterior lighting on buildings that we operate. And those are different scale of problems. Like if you have, you know, one light over a door behind Fire Station 3, yes, it's hundreds of dollars to fix that problem. The street lights are a little more
Right.
intensive. And obviously, what that will mean is up and down 434 in particular, we are going to have dark sky compliant, but we're not gonna hit zero lighting on up and down
Oh, yeah.
434.
That's
It's going to be whatever the minimum DOT.
And we have
Allowance.
a paragraph in there as one of our exceptions is the FAA and state and federal regulations supersede
Right.
anything we have.
Right.
And we were passing around information about the New Mexico Dark Sky Committee is going to be presenting an updated ordinance at the next legislature.
Correct, yep,
So if those are state highway lights,
yep.
then they will have to conform with the state regulations.
I'd be curious, and that's kind of what I'm getting at, is I wonder how much time they're going to give DOT to do that, because we're,
But there again, state or federal law supersedes the
Correct.
thing that we do. But, and I did follow up, and that was the thing I didn't print, was a list, and I can send that, you may have it, but I'll send it as part of our package, that, resources for the village. Specifically, it was a consulting firm out of Colorado that Los Alamos County used to do their assessment and their analysis and say, there's many polls, this is how much X dollars per poll, this one will comply, this one won't. So they did a thorough analysis. Also, the contact information for the maintenance person in Los Alamos. Twice I've tried to get a hold of Russ Coyle at Kit Carson, no response, but I have the best contact information I can for him. And 2 or 3 other contact information that the village and your employees can use as resources that were used by other
Sure.
communities in our area. And I would especially like to highlight the, that one consulting firm, because they'll come in and, like I said, do the analysis and stuff and say, this is what you got, this is what you need.
sure,
So that would be a real good resource.
okay.
So if I could have my copy
Yep.
back.
Sorry.
That's okay, I have a couple, go ahead.
Then are we good with changing it to all non-conforming lighting off at 10? I know it's a big concession, but I think it's also,
Well, and that's what we're trying to think of.
yeah,
So, again, I think, I see a few pitfalls coming, just to play devil's advocate here. The first one I think is, across the street at Lowe's, that set of stairs, it's not in compliant with current regs because there is no elevator to the top story, so they're pre-ADA compliance over there. My guess is that if we could pass that next Tuesday and have it immediately take effect, when we go to give them something, we're likely to get some pushback. I would imagine that there are some lighting instances in town that are grandfathered in such a way that getting rid of them is going to be fairly onerous. That set of stairs is just the first one that comes to mind.
let's
For Asian Fire Pizza?
Yep,
oh, okay.
yeah. It's covered.
That's under,
How late are they open?
there's a canopy on that.
But here's the problem, okay, say the business is closed,
Yeah,
it's still a public, you can still walk up the stairs.
yeah,
And so turning, even though none of those businesses, because who controls that lighting is probably the property owner, not Angel Fired Pizza or, you know, Toddy's they don't control the exterior lighting in the building, they're tenants there.
Mhm.
So whoever owns that building, we're going to be going to them and say, hey, you have to turn that light off now. And he's gonna say, if I turn that light off, my insurance is canceled.
Mm.
Isn't there a roof over the stairwell?
Yeah,
There
it could
is.
be, but horizontal lighting, I guess you could say, is still there.
Or even changing out for not as bright of a bulb, like I think some of this could be solved just with lower lumens.
But I understand, but the way it's written right now,
Mhm.
there is no conforming light that can exist for that staircase. Am I reading it wrong?
Is there no conforming, say that?
There is not a conforming light that they can illuminate that stairwell 24/7.
What kind of light is it?
It's just a giant light at the top of that.
They could shield it and use a lower lumen bulb.
It's under, but
Shielded already.
it's shielded already,
Mhm.
and it would still have to be extinguished at 10 o'clock, would it not?
If it's,
Regardless of lumen?
well, that's what we're talking
Yeah,
about
that's
updating,
where
is
we're-
saying like,
In other words, that's my point is, if you don't give them some way to be in compliance with a low enough lumen that can be on, I think that staircase, my guess, I don't own the building, I haven't talked to the owner of the building, but I suspect if we pass this thing and send code enforcement after them and say, you have to turn that light off at 10 o'clock,
We can't, but if there's a requirement that is either going to grant you insurance or not, I don't think an ordinance can supersede that. So going back to condominiums
Yep,
and their stairwells.
yep,
If there's a binding requirement that in order for them to stay in operation, they must have lighting on stairwells,
yep.
our ordinance can't say no.
I understand that, but I'm just, if I was gonna hand this ordinance to that condo owner, is that explicitly stated in there? That if you are required by either state or federal, you've got that in there,
Yeah.
but if you're required by your insurance carrier to light this stairway, that language isn't in here anywhere.
if they're required to light that stairway, then it would just require a conforming light, and they have 2 years to get there.
But they're gonna say their requirement is it has to be lit 24/7. So what conforming light in this code can be lit 24/7 in a stairwell?
That's if
A
we,
couple of things before you get to there. I mean, just as a specific example,
Yep,
we have stairs going from our deck down,
yep,
and they're the same adaptive motion control.
right,
So, so we have, like, here's our railing, and so they're 18 inches above
yep,
the step on the railing. So something does exist, and so if someone starts walking up the stairs at midnight because they want to, then those lights will come on as they go up, and then lights will come on as they go down. So specifically, a functional thing does work, but then Mindy is considering a sweeping change that we need to.
if we agree to it, then it would be your non-conforming lights need to be off at 10. Conforming lights can stay on, so they would just need to get something shielded and lower lumen. And then they can leave that
probably
on
the yellow.
all day, all night, run your electricity bill up, do what you want, but it's gotta conform.
so is there and that's where the 25% comes in?
No, the 25% was from before, when we were talking about any place that operated 24 hours a day, it would need to come down to 25%. What we're talking about at this point is changing the language so that instead of everything needs to be off at 10, it's just all non-conforming lights need to be off at 10. So if you need your stairwell lit 24 hours a day, you
Yep.
can. You've gotta get non-blue lights, lower the lumen, and have it shielded.
So, okay, then let's go back to this example of Lowe's. Non-blue, understand the reasoning there, the Kelvin, the travel distance, totally get it. The shielding, I don't know where their light is, but what lumen target are they gonna have to hit for it to be conforming for that stairwell?
That would be, well, it's 800 per bulb. And then the total for the contiguous property there would be the 16,000. So,
Okay, so as a commercial property, they could have up to 16,000 lumens of
exterior lighting for business locations shall be limited to 8,000 lumens per contiguous commercial
Sorry,
site.
8,000.
Sorry, that's my,
Okay,
I think
So that's
really,
10 light bulbs?
Yep.
And so.
Depending
10
upon
light
your-
bulbs across
right,
that thing.
or 20 if you
Yeah.
lower the lumens on
Yeah.
them. There's, what is it called? The
Well-
Veterans Plaza
Patriot Plaza.
Patriot.
is a Patriot Plaza.
Yep.
Is a great example of a business that is properly illuminating. their-
Shielded, yellow,
Yellow.
low lumen.
Yeah.
You can see anything
Yep.
happening there at night. If someone runs off property after trying to mess with their business, you can see them, you can see where they went once
Yep.
they're off
Yep.
property.
Because they're not in the
Great
glare.
example.
100%.
So we know that people can do it. It's affordable. It's happening already.
Yep.
So.
And again, I'm not saying I'm in disagreement,
No,
I'm just
totally get it.
getting to that next argument phase
Yep.
here rather than for the first time somewhere else, so.
You said a couple of things, what's the other?
The other things I've seen considered, and this is kind of back to the condos, you see this more internal stair risers. You can put a light on the riser, not the tread going up. It's fairly common in a lot of the newer custom homes that are being built, so I know that there are options for that. But, my suspicion is that those condo associations are going to have those exterior paths lit. I've been picking on the Lowe's example just because it's across the street and we all see that all the time. I guess those were my only big ones. So for a business, if you make this non-conforming change, they can have those paths lit. And you guys may or may not agree on all that. However, for a residence, the target is really what you're doing, which is the solar path lighting with motion control.
Mhm.
But are we thinking of making a distinction between a business and a residence on all non-conforming light must be off? Or are you saying
No,
that's specific to
think that would,
business,
I
or
think that
is
would
it-
apply to everyone.
the entire umbrella?
Mhm. Yeah.
Then, before we move forward, you moved my paper clip.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
6-1. Yes. Should've-
You're lost without your favorite person.
Yeah, I should have written it down. Bear with me a second. So back to section B, C, 3, where we have uplights and floodlights are prohibited. At one time, we were talking about string lights along the deck as being prohibited, but that's not stated now.
No, we've moved that into the holiday section,
Okay,
and if we
So,
need
but
to
that's
put
that's
parameters,
temporary.
it is temporary.
so what about if someone wants to have string lights year round?
The purpose of them doesn't matter, it's what kind of light it is, and that is against the National Electric Code, which we have no control over. And that's more of a probably fire adaptive community discussion.
I think string lights can be installed improperly, but string lights for patios are sold and installed commonly, lots of places.
Sure. If they're left up more than 90 days, they're against electrical code.
Right. So right now, under our temporary holiday string lights, rope lights, the first paragraph says temporary lighting may only be installed for 90 days. Blinking flashing lights are prohibited. Holiday lights must be extinguished at 10.
Mhm.
So I'm telling you that my string lights on my deck, they're not holiday lights. So
Mm.
therefore, I'm not subject to this temporary thing.
Do we want to call that temporary lights, and then holiday string rope? And say that, yeah, by 10.
Well, that's why I was wondering if we would move it up to where uplights, floodlights, and string lights are prohibited, and you just plain can't have string lights on your deck. Is that fair?
I think you're gonna struggle to get that through council.
Pardon?
I think you're gonna struggle to get that through council. I
But
think
not
your time
uplights and
cutoffs are
floodlights?
there. What's that?
Uplights and
I
floodlights?
think uplights and floodlights you're gonna get a lot more support for.
Because I have seen other, people with their patios and their
Sure.
decks and stuff,
Very-
running with string lights.
In the summer, very common,
Right.
right?
So then, how about on that section 3 of temporary lighting, saying holiday string lights and rope lights must be extinguished by 10?
Yeah, because those aren't a safety issue, they're party lights.
Correct, yeah.
So,
I mean, again, the inclusion from the NEC,
yeah.
that's just a reminder
Unless,
that
unless
like,
it's a
hey,
safety
guys.
issue, oh, I'm sorry,
Oh, no, you're good, go ahead.
unless it's a safety issue, I think the 10 o'clock cutoff should handle that.
It should, yes.
So could we word it to be that way?
Well,
So
but we're
holiday
also
string and rope
talking
lights.
about an overall arching change to say non-conforming. So would these be non-conforming, therefore they have to be off by 10?
Well, we're saying explicitly, these type of lights, holiday string and rope lights must be extinguished by 10.
So you have a few different buckets here. The first one that we're trying to get to is getting an ordinance passed and the new construction aspect, right? Not having 15 more homes built with 80 lights on the outside, right? That's the first bucket. Trying to, the further away from that you go, the harder it's going to be to control, because in essence, if somebody were to go buy a house that has no exterior lights on it, and then they put string lights around all of the decks, they will have run up against a lumen cap at some point. They will have run up against a 10 PM cutoff, but you're not gonna be able to control that as much as you can the new construction, because new construction is gonna require a permit review. So you're incrementally limiting lights in the new construction, the existing homes, the commercial side of it. So all of the ordinance in the world is great, but unless you can actually enforce it, you're gonna have a problem. So I think you're like 90% of the way there. This conforming versus non-conforming is something that if you can come to an agreement on that this evening, I think you're good to go. But trying to regulate string lights on a bunch of vacation homes, I suspect is going to prove to be a challenge.
Well, that should be a village-wide concern though, right?
It should.
Because this is a fire adapted community.
Yep.
And people come and visit, and I mean, it's a high elevation community, it's fire adapted. There is so much that people who don't live here need to know.
Correct.
So how do we tell them? We have to educate.
Yep.
And I think as a community, we should all be working together to educate so people aren't, feeding bears.
Right.
Or letting them in the house, or putting lights up that are gonna create issues with safety.
You have a perfect opportunity, because the fire adaptive committee is redoing their ordinance right now. And they are using all the NFPA guidelines, so educating about, no, you don't wanna have bulbs that can fall and a filament pop, and now all of a sudden you've got a grass fire. There's a lot of ways to go about this. The communication part of it is gonna be critical moving forward, and is gonna be a years-long process.
Right.
I'm just trying to get to the point where we have something that's passable through legal muster and council without getting another, we don't want to put that, we don't want the pushback, we don't want whatever it is. We've given all the businesses time to respond. We would love to have had responses from Lowe's, because it addresses some specific concerns that we're gonna have. But I don't think you guys need to beat this around for 6 more months either. You know what I mean?
No,
We've obviously taken a lot of your time
Can't rule
to,
by exception either.
correct.
And there are provisions for exceptions, because we knew that this case and that case. So again, we're just trying to capture as broad as we can, be as reasonable as we can, but we want to exclude the egregious things.
Sure.
So,
And I think where you have broad support from that is all the residents. What I hear from people, most residents are concerned about the vacation homes where the lights get left on for months at a time. Okay? They're a little less in the weeds about the stairway lighting by Lowe's or the pathway lighting. These are important factors. I'm not saying they're not, but what it feels like the voting populace really wants is some teeth to go after these vacation homes and say, hey, you can't leave 30 lights on year round. You have all these neighbors here. This is not okay.
Well, and I agree that that would be the most numeric, but some of the most egregious of the businesses, like we have so many complaints about the car wash.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that is totally crazy.
Right.
Some others, and here again, it may be directional.
Sure.
So I mean, that's why we want to capture some. So I did find the other thing I wanted to bring up that I saw that I didn't get saved is, okay, in B, the statement currently is all outdoor lighting fixtures will incorporate adaptive controls to actively regulate their lighting such that motion activated light stays on no longer than 5 minutes. And so we're saying then all outdoor lighting must be adaptive. Is that really necessary if they're shielded down yellow? And then, so you see what I'm saying? That's pretty broad to insist that every outdoor light be adaptive.
Yeah,
Particularly if it's controlled.
I was just looking at the landscape lighting section where we have landscape lighting must be turned off by 10. And I think if we say instead non-adaptive landscape lighting, so that section, are we good
Yeah,
with
we may
that?
have to go through.
Instead of non-conforming, do non-adaptive.
Non-adaptive landscape lighting must be turned off by 10 PM. So if you have outdoor landscape lighting that is motion controlled or, you know, dim most of the time, it can stay on.
Sure.
And then we don't need,
Do you have a good definition then of adaptive lighting on the front? Okay.
we do.
And you mentioned also, Jake, that you said in the snowy day, somebody takes that step and the first time the light comes on is when they get their foot on the step. You can adjust it so that it comes on before that.
Right.
More
Right.
sensitive. I mean, I've had
So what I was.
some that I've had to
thinking-
adjust because squirrels come by and they set it off, and I'd rather
I
people
was
set
just
it.
looking at that.
For sure, for
So
sure.
you could do
That's
that.
pretty-
Yeah, no, and all I have, it was a double
Because then we refer.
light on my front that was motion.
Yeah.
One of the lights burned out and I was like, I don't need two, one's fine, and it's motion only, and that's all I need for exterior lights, right by my, front door, I'm good to go.
Activate lights.
Where I think we keep getting lost in the weeds is, this is a fairly easy thing to do residentially. Gets a little more complicated commercially because there's other requirements that are competing.
Oh, their insurance.
Yes.
Not so much as it's safe.
Yeah.
Correct, it's primarily the insurance,
Which is fine.
safety standards that are gonna be driving that, so.
Could we put a provision, maybe,
Mhm.
maybe I should discuss with the committee
Okay.
here, but,
So then,
so
So
we
I'm
can
just
get
saying
rid
that
of, we can get rid of
if
C2.
there's special
Yeah,
use
I'm saying
cases,
if we-
maybe a.
C2 is
variance?
pretty much addressed by
Yeah, I mean, a variance is,
What do you think of that, Shelley? Variance, we've
C1.
been
Okay.
keeping you out of this.
Okay.
Jake and I have been going back and forth and, we both kind of at the same time thought about it, possible variance. If somebody really can't comply with any of this,
Mhm.
that they could come.
You've at least given that business an option to come in and make their case and say what they'd like to do and be granted, an exemption or a variance for one reason or
So
another.
under our exemptions, we currently have any person or entity may apply for a temporary exemption not to exceed 60 days from the requirements of this section by presenting the request in writing to the village. Exemptions will be only granted where extenuating circumstances make compliance with this section impractical or impossible.
And I think that's great, but I think what Gary and I are talking about is that's a temporary exemption.
So if we.
Can you add a,
Timeframe?
just if you delete out the time frame and say, somebody can come ask for an exemption for the reasons you listed are great reasons. But if they've got to come in and plead their case to this committee to say, here's what I'd want to do.
They'll just say, I want to
So
do it.
just get rid of
Correct,
the temporary
Yeah,
part.
get rid of the not to exceed 60 days.
Because now you've given people.
Yep.
Here's compliance per the letter of the law, and okay, you have an issue for one reason or another, please come in and explain what your issue is and the exemption
Which
you're
would be
asking.
like.
Again, because we can't
insurance.
supersede, insurance requirements
Yeah.
for.
Correct.
All the.
FAA, yeah. So right now our exemptions are law enforcement, public schools, FAA, special events, as approved, federal, state and county laws. Well, if it's a federal, state or county law, but their insurance, but anyway, that's, again, I don't want to be so nitpicking that we can't. And then any person may apply for an exemption.
Yeah,
Yeah,
an exemption from the requirements of
Is
the
it-
section.
I'm sorry, did you say any person or
Or
business?
entity.
Person or
Entity, okay.
so can I back up to the curfew and just run through all the places that we talked about the curfew?
Do we
So,
probably need to go through the entire thing and look for
Yeah.
verbiage like that?
oh, yeah, I got it all.
Okay,
Oh,
I'm ready.
you're so.
search, not, where's my highlighter?
So we still have non-adaptive landscape lighting turned off by 10 p.m.
What section?
Uh,
Landscaping?
BD2. So landscape lighting can be on as long as it's adaptive.
So how are you changing the word?
We changed it to non-adaptive landscape lighting must be turned off by 10. And then the other one, we have still holiday string and rope lights must be extinguished by 10 p.m. Good with that?
Show it to me.
This is just what we already have in there that we're not changing.
But I thought in little paragraph 3, or, holiday lights must be extinguished by 10. Did we want to say something about the rope lights in
Yep,
there?
it's already in there. Holiday string and rope lights must be extinguished. But I've been making changes as we go.
Keep me informed. Okay, that's been
And
fixed.
then, yeah, everything that we've talked about is.
Okay, the next thing we have is flagpole illumination must be turned off by 10.
Flagpole by 10, I think that's reasonable.
Because they can just get a timer.
And then outdoor sports facilities extinguished by 10 or within 1 hour of the end of play.
That's reasonable.
So then we have the general curfew, DA1, the general curfew, and we have all exterior lighting shall be extinguished by 10 p.m. What I'm proposing is that we change this to all non-compliant exterior lighting.
So if you, in that, and please keep typing, but that gives us the carve out for you have adaptive landscape lighting,
Yes.
you're good.
Yep.
I'm getting back to Councilman Humbert because I already know. Now, it may be that he's gonna change his particular lights to make them the adaptive style, but that apparently is readily available and not
Yeah.
difficult to do.
You can go on Amazon and look at all the dark sky compliant, landscape or pathway lighting.
Well, and I would suggest we have 2 hardware stores in town that we
Think of how much they could sell.
we inform them of, hey, these are adaptive lights. If you have these, you're gonna have some customers in the near future.
So then up next, we have government agencies and non-residential businesses, exterior lighting shall be extinguished by 10 p.m. I propose we change that to non-compliant as well.
Okay? So that's our stairwell
Mhm,
bailout essentially,
mhm.
okay?
And then,
I don't want to either, but we've got so many old exterior.
I know, it's something.
once we get there, we'll just, in 5 years,
That
we'll
was
get
more
back
for
together,
parents.
we'll do it again.
Sure,
we'll
sure.
Redo it. I will.
What did you do with paragraph 3 up there?
Nothing yet.
As long as
So
we-
that's,
As long as we
No,
define compliant.
right, well, that was gonna be, you're right where my thought is too, Gary.
We'll go back.
What is compliant, we'll pick a condo association.
Mhm.
Right now, they have a total lumen cap,
Mhm.
okay? Do you go for a reduced number? If you're an 8,000 lumen commercial property, that means you could have 800-watt light bulbs on the outside, or whatever, however you choose to apportion those lumens.
Mhm.
Do you want to aim for a reduced, in other words, after 10 p.m., a compliant light must be 25% of your total, or you're giving them full light is my point here with how you've written it.
So that's our paragraph 3 that I think we can adjust a little bit
I
here.
like that.
So government agencies and businesses. And I think we don't have any 24 hours a day, so just government agencies and businesses. Must have, I think we get rid of the exempt because we're getting rid of the curfew. So then it's government agencies and businesses must have adaptive controls that reduce lighting at 10 p.m. to 25% of 25% or less of the total outdoor light.
That's what I was looking. I just want to make sure we hadn't just exempted our way into getting away from the 10 p.m. cutoff, which it doesn't sound.
No.
So this says at Lowe's, they have to have a timer on their lights or, Ace Hardware, whether, True Value, that at 10 o'clock, their lights come down to 25%.
Right.
Look,
And that obviously doesn't apply to anything motion driven. So
Correct.
if they had a motion, we'll pick on Alpine, somebody's coming up to steal a grill off the front deck, the motion light kicks on, their cameras are recording, that event is totally
Yep.
copacetic.
A-okay.
Okay.
Hope the police get there within 5 minutes with the lights come on.
Well, it might take them a while to unbolt the,
They have 5 minutes to get this done.
yeah, exactly.
So then the last one is lighting for monuments and statuary must be extinguished by 10 PM.
Where are you on that?
That is DB3. And I think that just is, this is BB3.
DB.
DC3, no?
No, sorry, big D.
Oh,
Yeah, right.
so you just struck the whole thing?
No, I just said we keep it as is.
Oh,
I was just looking for all the times that we said stuff had to be up by 10.
so you looked at all of the 10
You just
o'clock
searched for the
meetings.
10 o'clock cutoff,
Okay.
got it.
Gotcha.
Mindy, did you use a word search for that? How did- Oh, cool.
She is.
You were so good.
Okay, so did we come back to your last point?
I think so at this point, but I think you've covered all the bases. If you guys are in agreement on those changes that Mindy has made, then I would say it gets voted, if you're ready for that, to elevate it to whatever the next step is. My guess is legal, but I'll confirm with Manager Weir once he has the paperwork in hand.
Yeah.
Are we good with it? I'm gonna move to approve our changes that we've made and move forward with whatever the next step is.
A second.
Okay, I have a motion and second that the latest revisions made as of today be incorporated and be considered our final version for moving the process forward with the village according to their needs. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. So what do? We give this to Rocky?
So, yep, the same form that you're gonna fill out for the other paperwork, you will attach this. And I would say, Mindy, with the note of, the committee has approved this, it is ready for the next step, but we're not sure if the next step is council or legal. And then Rocky and the manager will figure that out in the background.
Please let us know.
So we include this with all of our other stuff.
Correct.
The form.
Yep.
Submit it. Got it.
So, the last thing you have on your agenda is next meeting date.
Where's my-
I don't think we have one.
I would suggest, if you don't have to pick a date today, but my recommendation is you push that until after the first of the year.
Yeah.
Just with council meeting next week.
We never really have had regular meetings. We have, okay. So our next agenda item is next meeting date, and that will be as called.
So we won't be presenting this to council.
We're at.
It has to go
We're at
through.
there.
I will let you know what the next step is. I'm like 85% sure legal is gonna be the next step.
Okay,
And then elevate it to council, but
sounds good.
my guess is we'll have feedback from legal and then I'll be contacting you to go, okay, I got feedback, let's sit down and have a meeting again. That's my guess, but I don't know that.
Right. Okay, so if there's no further business, then the meeting's adjourned at 5:04.